The signal reached the Drevahl Ascendancy 3 years before the first human ship did, a garbled distress call from a mining outpost on the edge of what the galaxy still called neutral space. By the time the Ascendancy's cruisers arrived, the pirates who'd raided the colony were gone, and so was the mystery of who had wiped them out. All that remained was a burned insignia on the outpost wall. A circle, a star, 50 of them. They didn't know it yet, but they just found humanity's calling card. Colonel Ray Hutchins had been in the army for 22 years before the coalition fleet existed, and he still didn't trust a ship that didn't have a working coffee maker. The Iron Harvest had one, bolted into the mess hall like an afterthought, because the engineers who built her had been told, in no uncertain terms, that soldiers without coffee were soldiers you couldn't trust with a rifle. He was standing there with a lukewarm cup when Lieutenant Dana Ferris found him. "Sir, command wants you on the bridge. We've got hail." "From who?" "That's the thing." Ferris's jaw was tight. "It's not asking for us. It's asking for the regulars." Hutchins set the cup down slowly, like it might explode. 3 months earlier, a joint coalition task force, human, Velkarn, and 24 smaller species who'd banded together after the Ascendancy started swallowing border systems, had liberated a supply corridor near the Threll Belt. Nothing fancy. Standard infantry, standard armor, standard human grunts doing what human grunts did. Dig in, hold the line, and refuse to die on schedule. The Ascendancy had thrown 3 waves at that corridor. 3 waves of soldiers bred and trained from birth for war, augmented, disciplined, terrifyingly efficient. And 3 waves had broken against 400 humans with rifles, mortars, and an absolute, bone-deep refusal to retreat. The story had spread through Ascendancy ranks like fire through dry grass. Not because it was the biggest battle of the war, it wasn't, not by a long shot, but because of what the survivors reported afterward, shaking, still stunned. The humans didn't fight like soldiers who expected to win through superior tactics or technology. They fought like soldiers who had already decided they were dead, and were furious about it. If this is what the ordinary ones do, the Ascendancy officers had begun asking each other, what does Earth keep in reserve? They didn't ask because they were curious. They asked because they were afraid of the answer. The hail on the bridge wasn't a threat. It was a request, desperate, formal, translated through 3 layers of protocol software that still couldn't quite scrub the panic out of it. "This is Fleet-Marshal Oben Kays of the Drevahl 3rd Cohort," the voice said. "Requesting parley with Coalition Special Operations Command." Hutchins leaned over the comms station. "We don't have Special Operations forward deployed in this sector, Fleet-Marshal. You're talking to the Coalition's 12th Infantry Division. Regular Army." A long pause. "You are not the elite unit." "No, sir. We're the guys they send when the elite unit's busy." Another pause, longer. When Kay spoke again, his translated voice had an edge Hutchins recognized from 30 years of listening to men try not to sound rattled. "Then I request parley with your commanding elite unit. Because 3 of our garrisons have been destroyed in the last cycle, and the pattern of destruction does not match your regular infantry doctrine. It matches nothing in our threat catalog. We assumed, we hoped, this was the work of a specialized force. An anomaly. Not what you're gonna get more of," Hutchins finished quietly. He already knew what had hit those garrisons. Everyone in the sector did. Task Force Blackthorn, 600 volunteers, mixed branches, the kind of unit that got built out of people who'd survived the Thrill Belt and decided regular duty wasn't punishing enough. They weren't special forces in the way the Ascendancy meant it. No genetic modification, no exotic tech the rest of the fleet didn't have. Just soldiers who'd been in worse fights than this one and had run out of patience for being polite about it. Hutchins keyed the calm Fleet-Marshal. "I'm gonna be straight with you, because I think you've earned that after what your people have been through. Task Force Blackthorn isn't special forces. They're volunteers. Regular equipment, regular training pipeline, same boot camp as every private on this ship. The only thing special about them is that they chose to keep fighting after the point most armies would have called it quits." "That is not possible," Kay said. The tactical reports are accurate. That's the part you're not gonna like." 3 days later, Hutchins stood on the observation deck of the Iron Harvest and watched the Ascendancy delegation's shuttle dock. A courtesy extended after Kay's requested, formally and with visible reluctance, to to see a human training facility for himself. Command had approved it. Partly for diplomacy. Partly, Hutchins suspected, because somebody in Coalition High Command had a wicked sense of humor and wanted to watch the look on an Ascendancy officer's face. Fleet-Marshal Kayes came off the shuttle in full dress uniform, 7 feet of chitinous authority, flanked by 2 aides who kept glancing at the human soldiers in the corridor like they expected an ambush. Hutchins met him at the hangar bay. "Fleet-Marshal, welcome aboard." "Colonel." Kayes' translator rendered the word with careful neutrality. "I would like to see your training regimen. The one that produces soldiers such as your task force Blackthorn." "Sure thing. Right this way." He led them down through the ship, past the mess hall, past the rec room where a dozen off-duty privates were losing badly at cards, and down to the training deck where a physical fitness class was midway through what the Army had, with characteristic lack of imagination, simply called the Standard. Soldiers hauling themselves over obstacle walls. Soldiers running full combat loads through mud pits under simulated fire. A drill sergeant somewhere in the back bellowing something that made even Hutchins wince a little. Kayes watched for a long moment, his aides murmuring to each other in low, urgent tones. "This," Kayes said slowly, "is your ordinary training. Every private person goes through it. Basic requirement. And the volunteers of Task Force Blackthorn, the ones who destroyed my garrisons, they came from this. Same pipeline, same drills. They just kept going after most people would have stopped." Hutchins folded his arms, watching a 19-year-old private drag herself through the last stretch of the obstacle course on pure stubbornness, face streaked with mud, refusing to quit 50 feet from soldiers who'd feared her uniform's insignia for weeks. "See, Fleet-Marshal, that's the thing your intelligence never quite figured out. We don't build our best soldiers out of superior genetics or exotic conditioning. We build them out of the same raw material as everybody else. The difference is what happens after, who decides they're not done yet." Kayes was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his translator carried something that might have been the alien equivalent of a hollow laugh. "Then there is no special reserve. No hidden elite you have not yet deployed. There's Blackthorn. There's the 4th Marine Expeditionary. There's about 40 other units just like them, scattered across 100 worlds, made of people who walked into a recruiting office and decided this was worth doing." Hutchins met his eyes, steady. "We don't have a secret weapon, Fleet-Marshal. We've got about 8 billion people, and every one of them is a volunteer waiting to happen." The Fleet-Marshal said nothing more that day. He requested passage back to Ascendancy space that evening, courteous and formal to the last, and Hutchins watched his shuttle depart from the same observation deck where they'd started. 3 weeks later, the Ascendancy sued for peace along the entire Threll border. Not because Task Force Blackthorn had broken them, but because Fleet-Marshal Kayes' report had finally answered the question every commander in the war had been too afraid to ask. What does Earth keep in reserve? Nothing. That was the answer. Nothing at all. They just kept sending the regulars, and the regulars kept refusing to lose.